The Trapped Man, Report 1. Screaming. Constant, agonized screaming and begging. The Trapped Man is considered to be a high-class threat, one that the agency is known of since near its beginnings in the 1500s. This is one of the threats where any human who comes in contact with that threat should be shot. It will be doing them a kindness compared with the alternative. How big a threat is a trapped monster? Well, it's one of the agency's mission statements. Find a way to kill the Trapped Man. We have tossed scientists, doctors, soldiers, war criminals, and even utilized other deadly creatures. The result is always either failure, where the Trapped Man is uninjured, or worse, it works itself away little closer to freedom. The Trapped Man must not get free, no matter what. This cannot be overstated. The monster is at least 20 feet tall and located in a horrible location at the base of the Grand Canyon, in a cave that can be accessed via the Colorado River. Multiple limbs, rotten-looking flesh, and a face full of screaming holes. Holes into a void of darkness and evil. Recordings of the Trapped Man's screams actually match the screams of its victims. When first discovered by the native Amerinds that lived there, the Trapped Man was just a massive clay cube with a single digit of a hand sticking out. They didn't know what to make of it, but the exploring people came back to their tribe, bleeding from all over their bodies and complaining of a terrible pain in their heads. The story goes that each of the 5-man hunting party that came across the Trapped Man died the next day in the village, begging for release from their suffering. Their deaths were so agonizing that their screams for freedom echoed through the night. Death didn't stop the suffering either. When they died, the screaming didn't stop. Their features warped, their skin rotted, and their faces twisted to become a void of shadow. It was so terrifying that the village was afraid to cremate them, in line with their traditional funeral rituals. But the victims had to be burned, and that is what it took for the bodies to finally stop screaming. Even then, nothing would grow at the spot where their bodies were torched. The elder of the tribe, a mystic of some renown, traced back the hunter's path and discovered the Trapped Man for himself. This time, the digit was a little further out. The screams were a little louder, and the presence was stronger. The elder was able to resist the urge to touch the odd digit, something the hunters had been unable to do. For months, the elder studied the strange object found by his tribe. For months, people and travelers would stumble across the odd cave, drawn by some indescribable urge to come in and touch the trapped being. Their deaths, similar to those who first discovered the cave, were equally as unpleasant. Begging for freedom with increasingly loud screams until the body just died. Their faces would vanish, replaced by a gaping, screaming hole in reality until their corpse was burned. And as each person died, that limb would push further and further out. Eventually, the elder was able to see what it was that was emerging. A clawed, inhuman-looking hand struggling to drag itself out of the cube. The screams were clearer too. Free me, free me, free me, free me, free me, over and over again, without pause, without breath. Again, the elder was a mystical man of some ability and was able to resist the call. He immediately went back to his tribe and warned everyone to never approach the cave again. For evil is there, slowly breaking free with every soul that it touches. The tribe took up a sacred duty, lasting centuries, doing everything they could to keep the trapped man caught, to kill anyone who wanders into that cave before they can touch it. Even as the New World made its way to America, even as their people were killed by settlers and people wanting their land, the tribe kept this sacred duty, generation after generation. It was they who contacted the newly formed agency in the first place. Among the settlers, operatives from the agency had arrived as well, in order to learn about the hazards of the New World and to ensure that the monsters from Europe remained in Europe. It was the tribe and the agency who joined forces to stop the development of the Grand Canyon, to turn it into a nature preserve, to conceal the location of the trapped man as much as possible. It was both groups who took and gave lives to keep the trapped man from its eventual freedom. It was a miserable choice, but anyone not of the tribe or the agency who wanders into that cave will be killed before they can touch the cube, before they can weaken its prison. The risk of them talking to people, to spread the information about the trapped man, is too much to bear. Even if it's just a potential, the fact that it's a non-zero chance means they have to die. In order to halt the eventual escape of the trapped man, we have turned ourselves into monsters. And make no mistake, it is eventual rather than potential. No matter the efforts made, the creature has some way of drawing people in, to touch it and to brutally take their lives, to use it as fuel to drag itself further and further out. Those screams can't be forgotten. Those screams haunt the dreams of those who are unfortunate enough to hear them, of the nightmares of what will happen when the trapped man finally emerges. There is no kindness in its body, there is no grace in its begging. Cruelty and sadism are prevalent in its screams. As it escapes more and more, our worries increase. We learn more about the creature, about how it's immune to human weapons, from fire to blade to even radiation poisoning. And while the tribe may have lost their last member to war, disease and famine, the agency is still around, doing everything they can to stop the inevitable emergence of the trapped man.